both our mind and body are actuated by electro-magnetism. Our body is made up of atoms, which are very tiny, invisible bundles of universal energy. In that bundle of energy, there are electrons producing negative mental magnetic energy. In the nucleus, there are protons producing positive electromagnetic energy. Therefore, our body is actuated by the electromagnetic energy produced by the tiny dynamos called very tiny invisible dynamos producing electromagnetic power that is reflected in our mind. Our mind is made up of mental electromagnetic energy. This magnetic energy in the unenlightened beings have a positive aspect as well as a negative aspect that we experience mentally as our likes and dislikes, attachment and resentment, or attraction and repulsion. Attraction and repulsion are electromagnetic activities. They are automatic. There is no producer of electromagnetism. The physical and mental electromagnetism that we experience is automatic. We experience the positive attachment, positive electromagnetism in our mind as our attachment or our likes, and the negative electromagnetism as our dislikes. Buddha, for 45 years, dealt with this activity of electromagnetism in us. He referred to the main mental electromagnetic activity as our thinking, the process of thinking, that the Buddha referred to as the dukkha in his very first sermon called Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. He defined the word dukkha in this sutta as saying Sankitteña pancha upadanakkhandha dukkha. Upadanakkhandha means the 5 aggregates of the electromagnetic activity. Upadana means magnetic. They are the 5 aggregates that go to form our thoughts. The process of thought, the process in the thought is made up of such 5-fold electromagnetic activities called Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana. Rupa means the stimulation of our sensory organs in the body, eye, ear, nose, etc. When eye is stimulated, the eye creates rupa. The ear creates tadarupa, sound waves. Our eyes receive light waves, generating images or pictures, and they are called rupa. The ear attracts sound waves and produce the saddarupa, the sound image. Nose, the smells, the tongue, the taste, etc. Our mind likes some of these images, sensory images, and dislikes certain other images. Liking is a positive mental magnetic activity. Disliking is a negative mental magnetic activity. They are automatic. Ultimately, both liking and disliking leads to the process of thinking made of thoughts. As I mentioned earlier, a thought consists of 5 mental electromagnetic activities, elements, called Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara. Buddha, as I mentioned earlier, referred to the main subject of teaching for 45 years as dukkha. And as I mentioned earlier, he defined it in short at his very first sermon called Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, saying, Sankittena Pandu Padana Kanda Dukkha. The Four Noble Truth that he preached for 45 years is nothing but the fourfold aspect of dukkha, referred to in English as suffering, but it is not only suffering, the fourfold aspect. Dukkha, one aspect of dukkha is suffering, but dukkha here means vibration, wave formation, mental vibrations that appear as our thoughts, made of thought waves. These vibrations is referred to by the Buddha as dukkha. Cessation of mental vibration at the enlightenment is referred to as dukkha nirodha, end of dukkha, translated into English as end of suffering. Because both our mind and body suffer from these vibrations, from these mental magnetic activities. The basic mental magnetic that leads to our thought process, the source of thought, is referred to by the Buddha as dukkha samudaya, is nothing but the mental magnetic thirst called tanha in Pali, and that word is derived from Sanskrit word called trishna, meaning physical thirst. Buddha used the word tanha to refer to the mental thirst. The basic mental thirst is for sensory pleasures, referred to in the Buddha's language as kama. The objects of sensory pleasures are called kama vatu. And kama means the desire for sensory pleasure, the positive desire. And certain objects, mental objects that the mind experiences through the sensation of five senses have a pleasant form as well as an unpleasant form. The mental magnetism gets attracted to the pleasant forms and repulses the unpleasant forms. Therefore, Buddha referred to the mental thirst called tanha into three main aspects: kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha. Kama tanha is the basic thirst for sensory pleasures. And bhava tanha, bhava means bhavati is in Pali is a verb saying happens or get manifest. Bhava tanha is the thirst, the mental thirst for something to happen or get manifested. The mind thirsts for the present happenings or manifestations and dislike unpleasant manifestations. Disliking is a negative mental activity of the mind. Liking is a positive mental activity of the mind. But both these activities exerts the mind. It creates a pressure on the mind. That itself is suffering. End of suffering is end of these mental magnetic activities, attraction, repulsion, liking and disliking. Liking is referred in the Buddha's language as raga, disliking as dosa. And the ignorance of the reality of things and beings that lead to such liking and disliking is nothing but the ignorance called moha, ignorance of the reality. Both liking, disliking and ignorance leads to the activation called mental magnetism, which is called tanha in Buddha's language, and it's called dukkha samudaya, the root cause of our thinking. Because we think of things that are pleasant or unpleasant, or that we are ignorant of. Regarding pleasant objects, our mind wants them to be manifested. Once manifested, the mind wants to retain them. Unpleasant objects, the mind doesn't want to get manifested. Once manifested, they resent it. Attachment to pleasant objects is called raga, that is a mental magnetic activity, and resentment is called dosa, a negative mental magnetic activity. It is due to this mental magnetic activity that we get a pressure on our mind, and that is referred to in English as suffering, mental suffering. enlightenment as the end of suffering, because by enlightenment the mind becomes free of mental magnetism that get manifested as raga, that is liking, dosa, disliking, and moha, the ignorance of the reality of things and beings that is experienced by the mind due to mental magnetism. The mind of the enlightened one are activated by pure electricity, free of the mental magnetism, mental magnetic charges, positive charges for liking, negative charges for disliking. Liking is referred to, as I mentioned earlier, in the Buddhist language as raga, disliking as dosa, and the ignorance of the reality that lead to such liking and disliking as moha. Enlightenment means the ending of raga, dosa, moha, attachment, resentment, and ignorance of the reality. That is the final ending of mental magnetism that we call enlightenment. It is called enlightenment because mental magnetism ceases with the realization of the reality of things and beings that we experience through our sense organs, which are incapable of knowing the real nature of things and beings that they experience. It is through insight the enlightened ones experience the reality of things and beings that their sensory organs experience as long as they live after enlightenment. Enlightenment is called Nibbana, realization of Nibbana, and the ending of life after Nibbana is called Paranibbana. The complete cessation of all our mental and physical suffering. Because even after enlightenment, body suffers decay, sickness and death. But after the final passing away, there is no more birth leading to decay, sickness and suffering. And that is the ultimate bliss that one can realize through enlightenment.